Welcome back, truth seekers. Today, on Unmasking Deception, we are diving into a story that reeks of collusion, hidden agendas, and potential cover-ups at the very least, lying by omission. We're talking about the curious case of simultaneous undersea activity and the very different ways two major powers reacted. Don't worry, the title isn't clickbait, we just first need to set the stage, so watch to the end. At around the same time, the UK government openly warned about increased Russian submarine and spy ship activity near its shores. They were loud, they were clear, they were concerned. Meanwhile, across the pond, something very similar was happening. Drones were spotted hovering near critical undersea cable landing sites in New Jersey and New York. These cables, by the way, are the lifeblood of our global communication network. If you remember, just like the UK, the drones were reported as coming from the sea. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The US government's response? A collective shrug. Nothing to see here, they essentially said. Probably just some misidentified birds or harmless hobbyists. Yet in the UK, the response was very different. John Healey, the UK Defence Secretary in January.
A foreign vessel, Yantar, is currently in the North Sea, having passed through British waters. Let me be clear. This is a Russian spy ship used for gathering intelligence and mapping the UK's critical underwater infrastructure. Yantar entered the UK exclusive economic zone about 45 miles off the British coast on Monday. For the last 2 days, the Royal Navy has deployed HMS Somerset and HMS Tyne to monitor the vessel every minute through our waters. And I changed the Royal Navy's rules of engagement so that our warships can get closer and better track the Yantar. So far, the ship has complied with international rules of navigation. But, Mr. Speaker, this is the second time that Yantar has entered our waters in recent months. In November, the ship was also closely watched and detected loitering over UK critical undersea infrastructure. To deter any potential threat, I took measured steps then as part of a clear direct response to the Russian vessel. RAF maritime patrol aircraft, alongside HMS Catterstock, HMS Tyne, and RFA Proteus, were deployed to shadow Yantar's every movement. Today, I also wanted to confirm to the House that I authorised a Royal Navy submarine, strictly as a deterrent measure, to surface close to Yantar to make clear that we had been covertly monitoring its every move. The ship then left UK waters without further loitering and sailed down to the Mediterranean. As colleagues will understand, I won't comment further on reasons for operational security, but I want to thank all the personnel involved for their dedication and their professionalism. And I also want President Putin to hear this message. We see you, we know what you're doing, and we will not shy away from robust action to protect this country. And with our NATO allies, we're strengthening our response to ensure that Russian ships and aircraft cannot operate in secrecy near the UK or near NATO territory. Mr. Speaker, this is another example of growing Russian aggression, targeting our allies abroad and us at home. The heads of MI6 and the CIA recently stated together in a joint statement, Russia is waging, they said, a reckless campaign of sabotage across Europe. We're seeing periodic incursions of Russian military aircraft into airspace for which we are responsible. And on Christmas Day, the S-Link 2 undersea cable between Finland and Estonia was damaged. Many analysts believe this was caused by a vessel in Russia's shadow fleet. Mr. Speaker, Russia is dangerous but fundamentally weak. In Ukraine, it has suffered devastatingly high rates of casualties over 3 years in a war that it thought it would win in a week. And compounding the humiliation, Putin has been forced to turn to North Korea to reinforce its frontline fighters. And while the strategic defeat in Syria, of course, has exposed its diminishing power on the global stage, and at home, the Russian economy faces crippling strains.
The UK parliamentary address was very clear, and this was at the time of the events. Since then, it had been clear that both undersea and aerial drones were used. The spy ship and submarine were at the same time as the drones over the undersea cables at both the US and UK-based USAF bases. Now here's where it gets interesting. The US government's response? Nothing to see here, and people went crazy. It was nukes got lost, Elvis has returned. But here's the kicker. Both scenarios involve the same target, the vulnerable undersea infrastructure that powers our digital world. They happened at the same time, and yet completely different responses. Why the stark contrast? Why the sudden transparency from the UK, and the equally sudden attempt to sweep it under the rug in the US? Could it be that certain narratives are convenient for certain political agendas? Could it be that some threats are deemed worthy of public alarm while others are quietly dismissed? The timing, the targets, the contradictory responses, it all points to a potential coordinated operation, a strategic move to undermine our critical infrastructure, and dare we say, boasting. So what's really going on? And more importantly, who's pulling the strings? Well, the Yantar, the spy ship at the heart of the UK announcements, has a long history of similar activities. But why there? What was special and why at that time? Well, there was the undersea cables, and the UK now has 2 Air Force bases in Wales, 30 more US F-35As and some more US nukes. Quite a coincidence that Russia would map all the cables and send drones over these secret bases at the same time as all the other drones over US Air Force bases and undersea critical infrastructure. Would it surprise you to learn that this happened for the last 3 years at the same time? Why at this time of year? Why all over the US and every European USAF base? Remember, the FAA doesn't operate in Europe or the UK, so the drones over the US bases in Europe have nothing to do with the USA FAA. In the USA, the base commanders had no idea. General Mark Kelly, a commander at the Langley Air Base, said the drones were almost impossible to catch, and they didn't know whose they were.
I do have news directly from the President of the United States that was just shared with me in the Oval Office. From President Trump directly, an update on the New Jersey drones. After research and study, the drones that were flying over New Jersey in large numbers were authorized to be flown by the FAA for research and various other reasons. Many of these drones were also hobbyists, recreational, and private individuals that enjoy flying drones. In time, it got worse due to curiosity. This was not the enemy. A statement from the President of the United States.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.
Jets were scrambled. The FAA announced they had no idea. The FAA don't operate in Europe. So why did Trump say this? Why is there collusion with Russia? It's clearly a lie. What is he saying it and why? Let's look at what happens every year after the drones. That's the clue and the secret reason Trump is lying. At roughly the same time, every year, Putin does meet the press. This is his State of the Union and the big show-off for his fellow leaders, especially those from the BRIC nations. So why would Trump lie? Well, if the USA public knew Russia was behind it, then that changes how Trump has to interact with Putin and Russia. Would the US public allow for Russia to have what they want in a ceasefire? Would the US public not then push for more funding and backing of Ukraine? Tell us what you think below. Let us know where we are wrong. Trump could have said nothing, and it will all go away, yet he had lied, either outright or by omission. Remember, the FAA didn't know about drones, and now it was them all along. Like, comment, and subscribe, and ring the bell to get part 2 tomorrow.